Greetings. All right. I'm seeing some faces out there. It's a wonderful thing. Welcome, folks, to the meeting of a combined meeting of the Southampton Housing Authority and Planning Board members to talk tonight about Southampton's plan for a housing production plan. And our goal tonight is to gain citizen input into this plan. So your participation is I hope I can speak for all the members and say that I can't say enough how appreciative we are that people spend their time from their busy schedules to join us. We've got an exciting and I hope, thought-provoking evening coming forward. I don't know if we should do introductions because you can probably see our names. It's an advantage of Zoom, right? And introductions would take some time. So I think everyone can see who is who by just moving your cursor over names. But I would like to introduce Ken Comia, who's joining us from PVPC, excuse me, and have Ken maybe take us in the next steps for this meeting, because Ken is someone who's really been helping us all along to make a plan happen. And I think it's appropriate that Ken lead us from this point on. Ken, are you available?
Yes, thank you,
Perfect.
Jim. So good evening, everyone. My name is Ken Comia, and I am the Senior Land Use Planner in the Land Use and Environment section at Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. And with me is Jacinta Williams from PVPC, and she's going to be helping with regards to the some of the technical aspects of running a Zoom meeting. This may or may not be familiar to you with regards to engaging over Zoom, as we've been doing over the past year and a half almost. We try to make this an interactive meeting. So there will be some when we go into our breakout rooms, there'll be some exciting activities, or at least you get to play with virtual sticky notes. We'll try to get you to that point. But we'll get started with the presentation. And I'm going to just share my screen here. And Jacinta, I disabled the waiting room. But if you happen to see if people need to join in for whatever reason, please let them in. I will say that, noted. Thanks, Jacinta. I will say that this meeting is recorded and will be sent to Easthampton Media, and it'll be on the YouTube page. Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So again, welcome. So this evening is going to run a little bit with, we have a little bit of an agenda. We have an introduction. What is a housing production plan? I'm going to do a little bit of data and demographics to talk about that. Survey results from last year. I always get to boast about the town of Southampton, having worked on last year's project, which was a master plan implementation report, status report. And the town had over almost 900 responses in a survey that's being done over in a pandemic. So that's something that definitely provided some context and will provide some context for this housing production plan. We have some poll questions that'll be interactive. And then the breakout rooms, which will feature some of the housing production plan working group members in facilitating some of that conversation. And then we're going to talk about next steps, which will include a second community meeting, which hasn't yet been pinpointed. A date hasn't been pinpointed yet, but there is one planned. Okay. So this is the working group. It's made up of the Housing Authority, the planning board, and we have a member of the select board on this committee. And then from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, there's myself and Jacinta that is working this evening with you all to gauge and get some good context for the future development of this plan. So one of the questions that I think you have to ask yourself, and pardon, I have to work off two screens here, is what is affordable housing? Obviously, a housing production plan addresses affordable housing. So it counts towards the 10% minimum under Chapter 40B. The next slide will show you, will explain what Chapter 40B is. That affordable housing in the context of this plan is what is housing affordable to households with income at or below 80% of the area median income as determined by the United States Housing and Urban Development, Department of Housing and Urban Development. And then housing that is safe and suitable for the size of the household living in it and protected by a long-term deed restriction. And just for context, with regards to that AMI, the area median income, Southampton falls under the Springfield Metropolitan Service Area, the MSA income limit. So the 80% of the area median income, which is considered low income for a family of four, is $67,300. So the next slide is what is Chapter 40B. This is the Commonwealth's regional planning law. So in 1969, sections 20 to 23 were added, and this is what we call the comprehensive permit law. This is when you hear about, oh, let's hope that the town doesn't get a 40B development. That's what it is referring to. Basically, it's the requirement or the goal of 10% of affordable housing units within your community. That is the goal that the Commonwealth is trying to establish. When communities have at least 10% of their housing stock on the subsidized housing inventory, the decisions of the ZBA are protected from being overturned by the Housing Appeals Committee. And so with regards to a comprehensive permit, all other land use controls there is a process by which the ZBA is the actor, is the agent for approving a comprehensive permit. That's if a developer were to come into Southampton knowing that you have less than 10% affordable units that are established by the state, that they would be able to go and get their approvals just through the ZBA and the Conservation Commission if there were wetlands involved. So that's just for context for when I say comprehensive permit. With regards to the Southampton's subsidized housing inventory, this is based on 2010 data because this number right here changes every 10 years. And so in 2010, 2,300 units, there were 2,310 year-round units, of which 44 were part of the subsidized housing inventory, which is a total of 1.6%. And so there was data just released last week that there is a new number, and I think I have it later. I think it's there's a new number for Southampton with regards to the new amount of household or units that will be measured from when DHCD will now provide the town with a new percentage. That number is 2,500, I think 11. I'll confirm that, but I know it's over 2,500. That's the new 2020 census data. So what is a housing production plan? The DHCD created the housing production plan, which is a provision of the 40B regulations to make it easier for communities to become temporarily appeal-proof by lowering the number of subsidized housing inventories that they must create each year to demonstrate that they are making progress toward the 10% affordable housing goal. Program requires municipalities to complete a housing plan that outlines its proactive strategy for planning and developing affordable housing in a manner consistent with local needs. The final plan requires approval by both the planning board and the select board in order for it to be submitted and then endorsed by DHCD as a state approved plan. Within the plan, there are three specific components: a housing needs assessment. So it's a presentation of the town's current demographics based on best data that's available, housing supply, and public input, of which one of these meetings will serve as, those forums for providing input into the plan. We talk about development opportunities and constraints. We talk about the housing market. Development constraints, meaning there's going to be a slide further in this presentation that is your zoning. There are certain land use controls and regulations which can determine what type of use is built on those specific districts. There's also constraints based on the environment, right? So, and you also have the open space, your open space plan, which has designated some important parcels for preservation. So balancing a lot of those things that will definitely be presented within the plan to identify some possibilities of parcels that could be identified for future housing development. And that brings me to the development opportunities, which is just that. And then the action plan, which are the goals, and what are the needs in the community to be met, and what are the strategies to meet them. I think one of the things that ends up happening through this too, and through this initial discussion, is why is a housing production plan important? And I think for the biggest reason is you don't necessarily want a developer imposing its development on you. You want to understand that you have control over what types, locations, and designs of your residential development through your regulations that you have in place and through incentives you may be providing. Specifically, maybe through your inclusionary zoning bylaw within the zoning regulations. And so with that said, I think just understanding that it's a good planning process and a good way to understand the needs of the community when it's just related to housing, but incorporating all your town documents within the plan. So the planning process, we have the housing plan working group as I listed on one of the first slides. We are currently meeting monthly, if not bi-monthly. We have two public forums that are planned, this being one of them. So these are happening concurrently. We're going to finalize the plan based on the input that we received from tonight, the survey input that we received from last year, the input that we're receiving from the committee, and the input that we will be receiving from the town again when we have our next forum. And as I mentioned earlier, planning board and select board approval of the plan, and we submit to Department of Housing and Community Development for its approval, and then you start implementing the plan. So going into a bit of the demographics, some of the sources of this come from both the decennial census and American Community Survey. There are only two data points that have been fully released by the census, and that's just new population data. And then that housing number that I gave you earlier. But with this particular slide, you can see that the town has been growing. And since 2010, since your last census, the town's population has grown 7.5%. And this is the largest percent increase in the Pioneer Valley region. So the town is definitely growing, and having gotten to work with the community in previous planning processes, that's definitely the sentiment. And I think the town is understanding that and going through these planning process to make sure that they have these documents in order and in place so that you have an idea of how to proceed with understanding development and preservation within your community. So this slide shows, this is from the American Community Survey. So this is not 2020 data, but this slide shows that you have a whole mix of diversity of households with a diverse number of households making certain amounts of income, median income, and this is that slide. So just to put that into the context of who this plan and what type of housing would be addressed, by understanding this data point. Compared to other communities in the area, Southampton is on the higher end. So this slide was just put in to understand that we're within a region that has multiple median incomes through the various communities. But just to put into context of what's happening in Easthampton or Holyoke versus Southampton, your neighbors, and understanding, their numbers may be different with regards to their housing production versus Southampton, and that should be understood based on this. So one of the important points with regards to affordable housing development is enumerating those that are housing cost burdened. And that means those households that are spending 30% or more of the household income on housing related costs. And so the data that was provided in the American Community Survey suggests that 31.3% of homeowners are housing cost burdened, and 38.6% of renters are. And I think that's just to put into context, that there is this component of affordability that the plan will address when you talk about housing types, where it's located, what type of housing, just to be mindful of that. This slide, there's also in the planning process, and as I presented in 2020, when we talked about the master plan, and walked through some of the data points from that, affordable housing affects a lot of people, but I think that there seems to be a focus based on the general population and these particular populations that may need to have their needs met through the types of affordable housing that may be developed based on this plan. And just one of the data points that I drew attention to was that there in the town of Southampton, 19.5% of the population is 65 plus. In the community survey that we did last year, there was a lot of sentiment with regards to ensuring that there's the ability to age in place, in addition to ensuring that there's housing that's ADA compliant. So, drawing attention to the senior population and those that may be living with disabilities or identify with having a disability should be thought about when we're coming up with goals and strategies. Another component of the population are young adults. That was a population that was identified in the survey, of which that they had some ideas with regards to starter homes and how to remain living in Southampton if they're renting and they want to stay there, how to stay there. And so there are opportunities and strategies that can be identified through this process that will allow them to do that. So with this slide, this shows just the trajectory of the median sale price of homes. This data comes from the American Community Survey. The Zillow data source for 2020, which is not necessarily part of this this set of data, was that in 2020 the median sale price of home was $345,000 in Southampton. So that's definitely a jump. And I think that I know that I've shared with probably some of the people in this room how difficult it is to be looking for a home at the moment, just with regards to the sale price of homes. So I don't think it's necessarily unique in Southampton because it's happening everywhere, but it's just good to understand that context within the context of trying to purchase a home. So another component of the plan is the housing stock. And this data comes from the American Community Survey. As I mentioned, so the 2020 census data says that there are now 2,551 total housing units in town. So this breakdown will be different with the 2020 data, but this being 2019 data, or 2018 data, it definitely shows that 89% of the Southampton's housing stock is the detached single family product. And I think that's quite evident based on, I'm a resident of Easthampton and I drive through College Highway all the time. So, just along that, I know that you do have a mix of different types of uses along College Highway, but when you get into the neighborhoods, it definitely is mostly single family. And I think that's just good to know with regards to that. So with regards to housing stock, different sized households require different sized housing units to meet their needs. And so this particular slide shows housing units per bedroom, where if you're in a renter family, you have you're in a one bed, 33.8% of renters have a one bedroom versus 66.2 having a 2 to 3. I think it also is telling with regards to the one bedroom ownership opportunities, which could be ideal and an ideal strategy when you look at starter homes and or homes for seniors that want to age in place and downsize. So understanding that definitely is a strategy that can be explored further. And then also telling is there are no rental units with 4 or more bedrooms that could house larger families. So that's another data point to be mindful of. With regards to the housing stock, 91% are owner occupied, which means that 9% of are renter occupied. The age of the housing stock, and I know that Janet asked me to fill in the blank here for those built between 1980 and to 1999. But I think it's telling that almost 60% of the homes are built before 1979, and then you have about 18% of homes built since 2000. So your housing stock is getting older, and that's something that can be addressed through the housing production plan with regards to creating some energy efficiencies, utilizing certain types of funding sources to help you maintain your home. And those are strategies that can be identified within the housing production plan. So this next slide is the zoning map. And so with that said, where the town allows the housing types, and you'll see that a majority of your community is mostly residential. The that, you know, it can provide some, how densely housing is elsewhere in town can be built has a significant impact on housing affordability. You do have some identified parcels that are in mixed use, that's in your master plan. And that can be explored for some additional dense housing development. The minimum lot size, I know that this was a question on the survey, and you know, an exploration of how to address minimum lot size to increase housing production. That could be something that definitely comes out of the plan. And you know, I think as we continue to explore more with the committee, with the members of the planning board specifically, you know, and their discussions with and their interactions with the zoning bylaw, those are conversations that definitely will have an impact on housing development. So I don't have a map of the environmental constraints, but they will be present in the plan. But other things, as I mentioned earlier, with regards to constraints to housing development that are based on the environment, you have your, you know, your floodways, your erosion areas. You obviously have your zoning and land use controls, wetlands, protected lands, natural heritage and endangered species program lands, understanding where those protected parcels are, or the new open space committee, which is not necessarily new anymore, identifying the parcels that they want preserved, and understanding that there may be some discussions on how to engage with those parcels, how to, you know, if there happens to be housing development that could be built there, you know, is there a conversation that can happen with regards to cluster development or open space residential development? That's a possibility. But those are the types of things that, you know, could be addressed in the housing production plan. So quickly going through this community survey data. So again, this was done last year, June through September of 2020. We had 896 respondents, and they were all questions related to the master plan, to provide context for the master plan implementation committee to determine priorities along with the select board's input. And so there were land use questions, economic development questions, transportation, housing, and open space and recreation questions on that survey. We're just going to be focusing on the housing for the housing production plan. So in that survey, based on your income level, are there sufficient housing options for you and your family in Southampton? 83% said yes, and 17% said no. The next slide will provide some of the examples of, you know, their reasonings behind it. So yes, appears not enough, more options needed for seniors, needed for senior assisted living and low to moderate income housing. So we don't necessarily have these attributed to any specific age group or any specific person, but I think, you know, in context, you probably can figure out a lot of houses that are not affordable to people in my age group. That could be a senior, that could be a younger person. We are older and established, but our children, as they move out of the house, probably won't be able to afford Southampton. And so that's yes, and they provided that context. And then no, they can't afford, this couple can't afford to purchase a single level home in town on what retirement income would be. Student loans, so that addresses, you know, that aspect of individuals or families with a lot of student loans and their ability to purchase. And yeah, so that's just some context for this particular question. So this slide shows if you were to move to another living situation within Southampton someday, what type of housing do you anticipate would meet your future needs? And so 37% of these respondents said owning a house. It doesn't say what they're currently doing with regards to their living situation. And then, there's another third, almost a third, saying that, or a little more than a third, not anticipating requiring a different housing situation. Then you have a smattering of wanting to own a condo or a cooperative unit. So that suggests downsizing, right? Owning or renting a dwelling with everything on one floor, also a suggestion of downsizing. Living in a 55 plus independent community. So definitely addressing some of the senior housing needs to continue aging in place. And this last survey slide is on a scale of 1 to 5. I would like to see the town provide affordable and accessible housing options by promoting the development of these various options. The highest one that was responded that was strongly supported and 4, which is between neutral and strongly support, are housing that meets Americans with Disabilities Act compliance. Ways to fund those types of housing improvements, community development block grants. So understanding what funding sources that are available to help get those housing units to compliance with ADA is important and definitely will be addressed in the plan. I think, if we're to look at some of the other ones, continuance of detached single family homes. There's some neutral numbers here, specifically a duplex and townhouses and condos. Working through those specific regulatory tools that can maybe address that definitely can come as a strategy identified within the housing production plan when you're talking about creating additional affordable housing. So that's that. So we're going to move to this first poll question. And let me see. I'm going to start this poll. And so the co-hosts, which are the working group, I don't think we'll be able to answer the poll. Maybe you will, I don't know, maybe there'll be a fluke, but I'm just going to launch it for those that are on the call that can fill this first question. So the question is, what is your age? And there's provided some age ranges within that group.
Right, 100% compliance. Nice.
We all set? So I'm going to stop it here. We have some. I'm going to give you 5 more seconds. Okay, so we'll end it there. So the results, 47% of the attendees of tonight are between the ages of 65 and 74, followed by 24% 75 plus, and then we have 12% at under 35. So that's the easy question. We're going to go to the next one. Does everyone see those results? Okay. So this next question. Oh, stop sharing. This next question is, which viewpoint do you most relate with? And the responses are, and these are multiple choice, so you can choose. I couldn't control how many you can choose, but I would say if you could choose the top three, 2 or 3, please do. I want to promote more housing options. I want to be a more welcoming town to a more diverse population. I want to have more options for people who work here to live here. I want to have more affordable housing options, and I want better support. I want to better support seniors in our town, and I want minimal change in town.
And Ken, these surveys, just to reinforce, they're anonymous, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thanks.
So give folks 30 more seconds. So it hasn't moved, so I'm just going to stop it now. All right. Okay. Can everyone see that? So these are the results from this poll question. 67% of the respondents, or there were of these answers, there was 67% of answers to be a more welcoming town to a more diverse population, followed by I want to have more affordable housing options, followed by 50%. I want to better support seniors in town. So that's good. That's some good context for your goals that we'll be setting, as well as some strategies that can be employed to help address some of these ideas. So that's the second question. And the third question, these are concerns. So the third question is, what concerns do you most relate with? I'm concerned about losing the historic and rural charm of our town. I'm concerned about large 40B development in town. I'm concerned about increasing traffic congestion. And I'm concerned about losing open space.
How many can we put on, Ken?
Oh, yeah, so this is another multiple choice. I would say that choose your top 2. But if you chose all 4, that's telling too. All right, we're going to give 30 more seconds. All right, So we'll end the poll there.
Ken,
Yeah,
I'm noticing the participation rate for this set of questions is a little less than the last set. And I don't,
yeah, this one had 16.
yeah, I don't know if that means people don't have those concerns or they have other concerns that weren't listed. I guess we can try to flesh that out in the breakout
Yeah, I think we definitely could flesh that out and I think that the breakout groups will allow us to have those conversations. Okay, so I don't think this is you know, the number one answer is I'm concerned about losing the historic and rural charm of the town. A lot of your planning documents, you know, that's something that the town prides itself upon. So that's understood. And so what tools or what things that are out there can help still address, you know, housing development, but at the same time, maintain the historic and rural charm of the town. And those are some of the questions that, you know, we'll go through. Okay. So the next, I guess, before we go to the breakout groups, because that's the next exercise. I guess we'll stop here. I don't know if anyone had some initial questions based on the presentation. I will say that you know, this is obviously a snapshot of data. There's going to be some additional data that'll be present in the housing production plan that you didn't see this evening. Additionally, you know, there's the ability to reach out and to the working group as well as myself if there are comments or thoughts with regards to the data and or goals and strategies that will be coming out of the plan, that we just, you know, want this consistent engagement with you. But I don't know if, you know, before we start the breakout rooms, which currently I have scheduled for about 45 minutes, are there any questions? And Jacinta, if you see them, because I only see faces.
I'm scrolling through right now to see if anyone has their.
Cindy, I see you waving.
I speak?
Yes, please.
So I'm going back to the first question that you asked everybody, and that was the age one.
Yeah.
And there seems to be not seems to be, there is a large percentage of people, older people. I know a lot went into advertising this, and yet we still kind of get this, we don't get a lot of the younger population. It's not a question, it's kind of a discussion point, and how does this impact what's going to happen? That's kind of where I want to hear what people think about that.
What I'll say, Cindy, is that as we were looking at data results from the survey done in 2020, I think we had a good chunk of younger folks to respond to the survey. So I think that there's an understanding of some of their needs that have been identified either in forums and or through the survey with regards to continuing to be able to afford living in Southampton and or trying to move into a bigger home. That obviously is a concern. I think, you know, this happens with regards to engagement, and especially engaging over the pandemic to get, you know, a good amount of variety with regards to the attendance. But I do think that we have some survey data. We have younger members on the working group that I think can provide some context. I think that there's data out there to help support some of the maybe the goals and strategies that will be identified when we get to that component of the plan. But I don't know if any of the other members want to talk to that point.
I'll just add, Ken, and Cindy, you're very familiar with the town survey, but that we keep going back to that, but I think with good reason and with pride, that we had an extremely robust response rate to our town survey. Like Ken said, nearly 900 participants in a town of what, 6,000. I mean, statistically, that's off the charts for a survey response. So I consider that survey data to be very, again, robust and will provide a lot of guidance in addition to what we're gathering tonight. And we had good response rate, I think, from all age groups to the survey, if I recollect.
Yes.
So to me, that's something to a piece of solid data that we can really look at and pull from.
I think I'll just quickly add that there will be a process when the plan is in a draft form to share widely with the community. Similar to what we did for the open space plan and through the process for the master plan implementation status report, that it will be open to the public for review. And if there's some things that we're missing, that's another way to engage. So hopefully that will be the case. So we'll definitely, try to up the advertising game for our second meeting to get those folks in the room. So we'll continue to do that. Okay. So I'm going to go to, thanks for that question, Cindy. That was a good one. So we're going to move to the breakout room exercise. And this is going to maybe take a few minutes because I have to break everyone into a breakout room. So we're going to be using what they call the Google Jamboard. You'll get a link. When you break up into your separate room, you'll get a link from one of your facilitators. That will either be me and Jacinta working in one room, or Sierra and Jim in the other room. Some of the other working group members will be also within either of the rooms. But you'll get your link from either of us. So when you get to that, open it on your browser and you'll have a screen that looks like this. And there's going to be 5 questions that are posed. And you'll have these options of how to engage with this screen. So my suggestion is to use stickies. There's this little dot here that says sticky note. You click it. Oops, you can't click that one. You click it, a sticky note will pop up. You can write what you want with regards to the question and put it within the context of this particular frame. You can raise your hand, of which then the facilitator and the people on that in that group will be able to call on you, say hello, use your voice to let us know what we should put on the sticky. And then you also use the Zoom chat. So you have the chat function. If it's easier for you to write down something on the chat, we'll make sure that that chat content goes into a sticky note or on the page for each one. And so with that said, just going to quickly go through the 5 questions that we're trying to gauge folks' sentiment on, which is, what is the most pressing housing issue in Southampton? What are Southampton's greatest strengths or opportunities to address housing issues? What are the greatest obstacles or challenges to address housing issues in Southampton? What are the priorities that you hope the housing production plan can help the town address in the coming 5 years? Each housing production plan lasts for 5 years. And if you had a magic wand to address housing issues in Southampton, what are your top 3 wishes? And so each of those breakout rooms is going to address that And so for the next 45 minutes or so, we'll do that. I ask you that I'm gonna give a warning to both groups that there'll be a minute left when that 45-minute elapses to stay on. You're gonna be, we're gonna be going back into this group, this larger room, and just, end our meeting there. But hold on for a few minutes as I make everyone and put them in a separate breakout room. So I'm going to stop share here. 2.
If you can pull this off, Ken, I'm going to call you the wizard behind the curtain.
Okay.
So in order to use the sticky notes, everybody has to open their own individual link on their screen. Correct?
Right.
Right. And so the person that is going to be sharing the screen, so either Sierra or Jim, who's going to be sharing the screen, will be able to see what you put in real time when you're putting the stuff on your screen. So let me get these rooms set. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to make sure that Jim and Sierra are in the room, which they are, and then yeah, let's a pop-up should happen on your screen that says, would you like to join this room? Please click that, and hopefully you'll see, some familiar folks in that room. Okay. It worked for
There we
you,
go.
but because I had to go on my laptop on another account. So, but I'm glad that we were able to navigate, this fun Zoom breakout rooms for this community. So I think we had some great conversations, at least in our breakout room. I don't know if, in the next, let's say 5-10 minutes, if we can go through and summarize some of the major points for each of the questions. Maybe we start with the other room, if you have that Jamboard easily accessible to share the screen.
Sarah, there you go. Thank you. Sarah was our Jamboard queen. She
Awesome.
kicked it.
So if everyone can see that, our main themes on this first one were younger people and seniors, like I think we had talked about to some degree earlier.
Great. So if you want to just go through the rest of your slides, and then we'll. So it looks like the greatest strengths and opportunities to address housing issues. Dedicated people definitely made an appearance in our section. Strong community, active committees. Good schools. Great.
Are you ready for this next one?
Yeah.
These are the obstacles and challenges.
Zoning. Yep, that came up in ours. Lack of public transportation, that's an important one. Fear of increasing crime or affecting the rural characteristics of town by bringing affordable housing. I mean, that's an interesting one, and that definitely there's some feelings attached to that, but I think those are navigable as a community to discuss when you're looking at ways to develop that, either as possibly working with a housing trust fund to develop it as a town, or in partnership with a nonprofit. I think that there are ways to the stigma to kind of clear that up. Let's go to the next one, Sierra. Priorities that you hope the town can address in the next 5 years. Housing trust, awesome. I will say that there are a lot of strategies that have been identified in both of these groups that will make our job and the working group's job easier in identifying those and pushing those forward. Awesome. Identifying existing properties that could be repurposed for low income affordable housing. That's great. Being able to do that. And then, yep, and then education. That's great. Sierra, the last one. So the 3 wishes: mixed use area with small businesses and apartments, tiny homes, accessory apartments. I don't think that showed up in the last one. Mixed use, affordable and fair market value together. That's great. This definitely addresses density, because you want walkability in town, multiple apartment buildings. Awesome. So I'm going to quickly share my screen about where we are with that. Oops, that's not. You're seeing all of my screen, right? No, you're seeing that. Okay. Pressing housing issue in Southampton. Wait, is this?
That's ours.
That's yours. Oops. Zoning, the size of homes for for retired or young people, the difficulty to find those apartments and the rentals. We're going to take a look at this median household income statistics and ensure that for the final plan that we can clarify some of that data. The proliferation of giant expensive houses on open space and farmland that are designed to make money for developers, but not designed with land use or environmental use of space. And that's something that came clear with our discussions in regards to planners' favorite terms called McMansions, and you've all identified that in your discussions. Diversity, that's great. What are Southampton's greatest strengths or opportunities to address housing issues? Again, dedicated citizens, their space. But obviously, you have planning tools at the ready to utilize when you address that space and how it's used. You also have the ability to change regulations to ensure that you're maximizing that space if in fact you do want to support either denser housing or smaller lots. CPA funds, that's great. And again, I suggested that that is a strategy that can be employed when you're looking at housing, affordable housing development. Greatest obstacles or challenges to address housing issues in Southampton: the balance of open space and rural character, this access to public transportation. The pandemic which has changed, I think, a lot of the game with regards to construction costs and time delays. I think we're definitely going to be taking a look at that inclusionary zoning bylaw and how that's addressed within the context of, either application or and why it hasn't worked. Because I think that there is an ability there to address that. And we had some good conversations about density and zoning and regulatory means to possibly look at in addition to that inclusionary zoning bylaw. What are the priorities that you hope the plan can help the town address in the next 5 years? Changes to zoning, helping find agencies through possibly an RFP process to build, partner with a nonprofit to build that affordable housing that you need. Frontage, addressing frontage, reevaluating the zoning, and addressing these solutions to complement open space and your plans regarding that. And then finally, the 3 wishes: zoning, money to develop affordable housing, which definitely, I think there are ways to do that within your means, and subsidies to build affordable homes for first-time residential home buyers. I think that's great. And there are tools that can be used there. Housing trust, open space, that includes apartments and duplexes. That's nice. Smaller homes in the 150 to 300 range. Zoning, this first-time home buyers to help with down payment and closing costs is very important. So there's a lot of overlap, but there's a lot of unique things that we discussed this evening that I think are very helpful to help with the future development of the plan and our next steps, which brings me to the next steps. Which is, I will be meeting with the working group to establish that next meeting, which will talk about goals and strategies. Like I said earlier, and this is a promise to Cindy, that we are going to try our best to get this out there, that advertisement to maximize participation. Although we had, I think, almost 28 this evening, so that's good. We're going to continue to work with the Housing Production Plan Working Group, and then work towards approval of the plan with the Planning Board and Select Board, work through those particular processes, and then submit for state approval. And I'll work with this committee in approving, in ensuring that we get the comments from the state and incorporated into your plan. And then we submit it. So with regards to the 40B program, there's a complete plan with the required elements. I talked about that earlier this evening. There's the approval versus certification. So approval is ensuring that the DHCD is ensuring that the planning board and the select board approve the plan, and DHCD approves it to ensure that everything is there. And then the certification, which have had discussions within the working group, which would require, based on your census numbers, at least 12 affordable units a year. And the thing with certification is that will make it harder, or it will actually stop any 40B development. It'll make it harder once you have an approved housing production plan with regards to 40B development, but when it's certified, that definitely ups the ante for that developer and having to address housing development within the 40B program. And so the last slide is my contact information. And I'm seeing some comments in the chat. Yes, thank you, April, with regards to the water resource. Sierra confirming that. And Caitlin, we will definitely, I think Sierra had set up a Gmail account, and there was a link on the flyer that if you submit your email address, we can definitely ensure that you get communication for that future meeting.
Can I make a comment from the planning board? I know you have two representatives from the planning board on the HPP program, Sarah and Dan, and they're fantastic. And they probably mentioned to you, and everybody should know this, the planning board is going through zoning bylaw review. It's been going on for quite a while. And I'm really happy to hear Sarah bring up the point that what comes out of this process should be strongly considered as the planning board goes forward on their zoning bylaw review. So if there's some like concrete way to do that, I know I'm going to be thinking about it. Sarah and Dan surely will, to do that as well. So just to let people know, this is very timely, very, very timely.
Thank you, Cindy. I actually have I'm having a conversation with your new planning consultant tomorrow. So I definitely am bringing up the housing production plan because housing all of a sudden is just very important and so in the forefront. And I think this is an awesome opportunity to take advantage of. But we'll leave it there. I don't know if anyone had any last comments. We'll definitely, again, put this on Easthampton Media. The breakout rooms won't be in there, but we would definitely will have those Jamboard PDFs that will be incorporated into the plan, and we'll make sure that it's also available on the town website, in addition to the presentation this evening. But other than that, I don't know if any housing. Yes, Jim.
Ken, I would just like to offer thanks to folks. There's a number of folks I want to thank tonight. And at the risk of missing someone, which I apologize if I do, but I want to start with citizens of Southampton who joined us tonight. I think it's really, really important, those of us on the various boards and whatnot. Again, it's a good dedicated group of folks, but we really need input from folks in town. So you taking the time, everyone's really busy to do this. Can't thank you enough. It's very, very helpful. I also want to thank Yacinda and Ken from PVPC. Really put together a great program tonight and help facilitate things. Thank you both. Our select board member who's also joined us tonight, Joy Piper. Thank you, Joy. Really, really appreciate your dedication to this and continued ongoing presence. And also our Congresswoman in the State House, Representative Lindsay Sabadosa, joined us tonight. I think she had to leave, but she was definitely part of this. Appreciate that. I saw that Chris Mazza of the Reminder was on, so this will be reported in the Reminder. So these are all, I think, positive things, and I want to thank those folks, particularly Representative Sabadosa, who I imagine must have an extremely busy schedule, but she's clearly in tune with constituent situations and made the effort and joined us tonight. That's really, really important to me, and I would imagine important to all of you too. So thank you, everybody. This was a very successful evening because of you.
Thank you, Jim. And also thank you to Chris Fowles and Francine Tishman, who are also on the select board, for joining in. It was really good to see you guys come on. I know Housing Authority and Planning Board are excited to see you too, because they've been working really, really hard on these discussions.
Thank you, Joy. I knew I'd miss someone. Yes, appreciate the select board, who's obviously very busy folks to, again, join us here. Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Francine.
And it's 8:30.
All right.
Wow.
Thank you all. You guys all have a great evening, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Have a great night.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.